Welcome to the Let Us See, I got caught off guard, but welcome to Let It Be Known special report out of Mississippi. Lawmakers in Mississippi are at odds over a bill that would create an unelected state-appointed court system in a district within Jackson, a majority Black city, with some concern that the move smacks of modern-day Jim Crow. The Republican-controlled Mississippi House of Representatives passed a bill, HB 1020, last week to expand the Capitol Complex Improvement District, a defined area within Jackson, and create a separate court system within the city, which is, according to the US Census data, 83% Black. Two state offices, both of which are currently held by white officials, would entirely appoint. Our special guest is Jackson Mayor Chokwe Lumumba, and we have a dream team of journalists: Barrington Salmon of NMPA's, of one of our best journalists, Barrington Salmon, Austin Cooper of the Washington Informer, and of course, attorney Robert Tarver. But first, Mayor, look, let's just jump right into this. We've seen this HB 1020. They are coming after your city, and they're coming guns ablazing with Jim Crow written all over it. Your reaction, and what's the reaction, Mayor, to the residents of Jackson, Mississippi?
Well, it is a concerted effort to attack Black leadership, and it is part and parcel of a lot of proposed bills over successive years. But this is the most blatant attempt to do so to date. And residents are infuriated. Residents have been demonstrating. We've been doing, legislative watch to see, who are the legislators that are supporting this. We have been putting pressure on businesses. In fact, at one of the demonstrations, I made it clear, while I have a lot of contractors that beg of my time every day, if they can enjoy this Black wealth, then they can support this Black city. In the words of our brother King said, in the final days, it won't be so much the words of our enemies that we remember, but the silence of our friends. And so I'm putting everybody on notice that this is not going to go quietly. We will not allow such a draconian bill to be imposed on our city. And yes, Jackson, by its demographics, is considered the Blackest city in the nation. And this proposed district encompasses the most densely populated white portions of the city. Approximately 86% of the white population in Jackson is encompassed within this proposed district.
Yeah, and so we know that they have the votes, right? We know that it's for whatever reason how rigged things are down in Mississippi, how historically racist things have been down in Mississippi. You call a spade a spade. This is Jim Crow without question. This is a return to their glory, right? Mm-hmm. But they've been after you, Mayor. Let's face it. Since you took off, since you were sworn in, we see the water situation there. The pipes are so old. EPA head Michael Regan was on this program, Mr. Mayor, and talked about the atrocity of that situation. And he was genuinely shook by what he saw. You're not getting any help, are you?
Yeah. Well, my shoulders are broad enough that I can handle their attacks on me. I'm not so much concerned with the attacks that they wage on me as I am the attacks that they wage on our community, on our people. And that's where we will struggle without cease. To ensure that we have equity, that we have self-determination in the city of Jackson. That is a guiding principle in which I govern each and every day, and it certainly is going to be a guiding principle in this particular fight. Administrator Regan was a tremendous support to us, has been a tremendous support to us in the midst of this water crisis, and I think that it should be noted that the EPA, for the first time in U.S. history, not only provided funding directly to a community in the amount of approximately $800 million of total federal funding. By comparison, our brothers and sisters in Flint, were supported with $100 million. So that's just how large this undertaking is. But also they hopscotch the state in order to provide us, the type of technical support that we need in order to see this fix take place. This was at the hands of a deliberate indifference and a willful neglect of the state of Mississippi for generations. My predecessors, why I certainly have had critique of certain decisions over time. My predecessors lifted up this challenge as well, and so this has been an attack on a Black community and on Black leadership.
And before I turn it over to another journalist, Mayor, I got to ask you: have you heard from the White House? Have you heard from Democratic representatives in the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Senate? Is the Congressional Black Caucus standing with you down there in the face of what these Republicans are doing?
Yeah. Well, the local Congressional Black Caucus has been standing strong against these bills. I will say that yes, they have been standing strong, and that is much appreciated. With respect to other legislation that is proposed at this time, we have talked to some federal leadership. I won't expose at this time, just for strategic purposes, who we've been talking to, but they're taking note of it. The federal government usually does not step in until the bills finally become law. And so House Bill 1020 was passed in the House of Representatives. It has got to go to conference and go to the Senate. And another bill that I think is significant to this conversation and is part and parcel of the conversation of seizing power in Black cities is Senate Bill 2889. Which seeks to take over our water system, a water system that they've been neglecting and have not supported any of our needs for generations. And now that we have $800 million in order to spread across supporting and maintaining and creating a resilient system, it suddenly becomes an attractive asset for them to take over and profit from and get their pound of flesh from the residents of Jackson.
Yeah, Barrington Salmon, one of our top journalists. I'm going to throw it over to you, and then Austin Cooper, another one of our top journalists. But Barrington?
Good afternoon. Welcome, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I'm wondering, what types of mechanisms do you and other legislators and residents have to fight against this? Do you have anything effective that you're using or can use to fight against this?
Yeah, well, we're certainly trying to wage war against these bills before they become law through the legislative process in several ways. But we do have some other tools in the shed. I don't believe that it is advantageous for me to put that, out in the public for public consumption at this time. But I will tell you that there's a robust effort. But I do believe that programs like this allow us to unify against these efforts, not only in Jackson, Mississippi, but talking earlier with my sister Tashara Jones and in St. Louis, and I know that there's an effort to not only attack her in her city, but also in Quentin Lucas in Kansas City, Missouri. And so we have to be certain that we are vigilant, that we understand that these are not these laws are not being proposed in a silo, that these are a strategic. It is a strategic effort and a strategic attack against Black leadership and seizing power all throughout the country. One more example I would point to is the effort to take over airports within Black cities. We have been, embattled in a fight over our airport over the last 6 to 7 years. Prior to our fight, they waged war against Charlotte, North Carolina. They waged war at one point against New Orleans, Louisiana.
Yep.
They waged war against Detroit, Michigan. And so these things are happening. They have already planted the seeds to try to wage war against Atlanta, Georgia. And so this is not happening in a silo. It is a concerted, organized effort to take power of institutions and of Black cities.
Before we throw it to you, Austin, one of viewers, Mike V, is asking the Honorable Mayor if any other mayor from around the country, specifically the Atlanta's mayor and the District of Columbia's mayor, have they reached out at all?
I consider them both friends. I have not spoken with them about this specifically, and I'm not certain how aware they are. But I have had a number of mayors to reach out. I do know that because we're all in we communicate frequently, and pass things along, sometimes even in a group message. That former mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms did reach out, so she's aware.
Right.
And a few other mayors that expressed outrage and support of us in our city. And so I do believe that we do have unity, that they do understand the great importance and are in solidarity with us. But specifically, Mayor Bowser and also Mayor Andre Dickens, I'm not certain whether or not they are aware of what is being waged against us.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's interesting because as we said before we went live, you and I spoke a little bit, Mayor. It seems like more and more people are now just starting to learn of this situation because of the Black Press of America. Austin, I'm gonna throw it to you.
Brother Honorable Mayor, good to see you, sir. Thank you for coming on. February 17th, 2023, today. What, if anything, sir, surprises you about race relations in Jackson, Mississippi? I mean, did you see this coming? Are you shocked? I mean, were you shocked? Were you not shocked? I mean, what was your initial reaction to hearing about this legislation, sir? And what does it say about the state of race relations in your city and the state?
Well, my initial response was to call it for what it is, and to say that this is apartheid, to say that this is Jim Crow 2.0, and that this is plantation politics, right? And so that is my initial reaction. Now that being my reaction, I cannot suggest that I'm surprised in any regard, because this is part and parcel of an effort we've seen over successive years. And so, what I am surprised by, if anything, is how they have such great disdain for being called what they are. My position is, if you walk like a duck, if you quack like a duck, then you should be proud to be a duck, right?
Right.
And so, if you want to introduce draconian racist legislation, then when we call you for what you are, then wear that badge proudly. As we fight you. And so in the great words of Coach Dennis Green, who said, one before that they are who we thought they were. And so they've protested against, my calling out these issues and speaking nationally against these issues. But it isn't my words that reflect poorly on our state. It is their actions.
Yeah, absolutely. We have the distinguished attorney out of New Jersey joining us as well, Attorney Robert Tarver. I know that there's some perhaps some legal things that we haven't yet delved into, but I'll throw it over to the attorney to talk about those things, or something else might be on his mind.
Yeah, well, I don't know if there are any legal things that we haven't delved into, but there's something here that we need to understand, because it's actually happening across the United States. The creation of these special improvement districts, these separate areas that are set aside by law to have different jurisdiction, different economic requirements, different allowances, provides the ability for these particular legislators to do this. If it were not for the creation of this capital district, as I understand it, you wouldn't be talking about the mechanism of being able to narrow this thing down. So one of the things that we have to be careful of, and I gotta tell you right now, Atlantic City has a tourism district. There are other cities who have a tourism district or this and that. It is nothing more than a set aside for the ability to be able to legislate differently in that area than others. And so that laid the fertile ground for being allowed to set up different rules within that particular area. Now, having said that, it is unprecedented that you would allow for a separate judicial system to take place within the confines of an area. Now, we all know, for example, you do have courts that are set up in separate places. You know, the Eagles just played the Super Bowl over in Eagle Stadium because they were so rowdy. They actually set up their own court there, but it wasn't a separate court system. It was just an extension of the same court. Here, you are actually having a separate system set up because Mississippi was it was actually the first state to allow for elected judges, but they've gone away from that model within this district, and they are now appointing people. That means there's no scrutiny from the public. There's no scrutiny allowed from inside. And these guys, the Chief Justice, I believe the public safety director, they will have broad discretion, unfettered discretion to put the people they want in these offices to do the things that they want. And there you go. When you start putting people in these offices that you want, you have expectations that they are going to handle things in a certain way.
Absolutely. And I think that you have appropriately drawn comparisons and distinguished between other matters that we've seen and what is happening today. You know, when we talk about these larger efforts in 2017, when they created this Capitol Complex district, the CCID, a group that included myself and a number of other organizers. Before I was actually elected to the position of mayor, we formed an organization called the Coalition of Economic Justice to fight this particular legislation. And sadly, some members of our caucus supported it. Now, I will say that when they supported it, it certainly was a lot different than what we're talking about today. But we saw it as a Trojan horse at that time. It came under the guise of supporting infrastructure within the district, that the state would take more responsibility around state institutions and state property. And so that's why they were supposedly creating the district in order to make investment there. Now, first and foremost, it should be noted that the investment wasn't coming from state funds, as it was coming from a larger portion of our tax dollars, specifically in the city of Jackson. And so they were forcing us to use our money towards improving around their facilities. But also, we saw it as laying the foundation for creating a city within a city. And so, you know, even with the example of Eagles Stadium, yes, they do have a court system in Eagle Stadium, but it has limited jurisdiction. The courts that we're talking about here will have the power to sentence someone to life or to death. And so, you know, this isn't the first time that we've seen justly unfairly dispersed in a place like Mississippi. And so we have to be vigilant here, and we have to be vigilant all across this country.
So the notion, as our producer it says, the notion of high crime is just simply a smokescreen here. Mayor, one of our viewers, Power 96, he posts under the name Power 96. He asks, does that bill 1020 go against the Mississippi Constitution?
Well, I think that it violates. I think it is fraught with constitutional issues. You know, I will say that there is a robust team of individuals and philanthropic and community-led organizations which are looking intently through the many issues in the bill. You know, to some extent, you don't want to expose where they have holes within their legislation. So I'll just leave it at that. But I will say that we do have a strong team, and we are willing and welcoming of more people to join the team. You know, the old saying, if they come for me in the day, they'll come for you at night. And so I want people to understand that this isn't just a Jackson concern, but it's any place that we find ourselves across the diaspora here in the United States.
Well, let's we only have a few more minutes left with the mayor. We're so appreciative that the mayor has taken the time. I understand you have a very packed schedule, but we certainly appreciate this time. But let me throw it to Barrington and then to Austin before we let the mayor go. And also I want to give Attorney Tarver another interaction with you, Mayor, before you jump off. So let's start with Barrington.
Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering, for those of us who are not in Jackson, and who are pissed off about what's going on, what are some things that we can do to support you, to put pressure on these people, that type of stuff?
Yeah, well, I think that it's important to, do what's happening here, continue to lift your voices so that it doesn't become, an action that takes place in the dark, and also contribute resources towards, a legal fight that is certainly to ensue. And when I say resources, that can be in the vein of financial, but it could also be just in terms of contributing our collective genius towards how we strategize against these efforts. And so I just ask that you continue to do exactly what you're doing today, and that's lifting it up. Whether we have other mounted demonstrations or actions or direct actions take place, we will certainly be in communication with you so that y'all can join in solidarity.
Thank you,
Certainly
sir.
appreciate that, sir. And Austin Cooper of the Washington Informer.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, assuming this legislation, sir, does indeed go through and is signed into law in the state of Mississippi, have you begun, sir, having even preliminary discussions with the Biden Justice Department to see what actions might be taken once indeed, assuming it does indeed, sir, become law?
I have not spoken, forgive me. I have not spoken to anybody within the Justice Department about this to date. I have had other communication with other federal officials, I should say, about a strategic, design of how we combat this. But they won't take official action in any regard until it actually becomes law. That is the typical federal response, is to not take action or not to interfere until it becomes law. I guess from their perspective, the bill could die at any point, and they don't want to intervene before the issue is yet ripe.
If the bill does pass, Mr. Mayor, when will it go into effect?
That is not certain. I'm certain that there may be some influence of filings and other matters within the coming days if it were to actually become law. I'm certain that it is the state leadership's intent that it would happen immediately, and how we might fight that, is not yet known. Taking place immediately.
And Mr. Mayor, you've been serving since 2017. You've seen a lot down in Mississippi. Obviously, the water crisis is on everybody's mind. The residents, I'm pretty sure you've spoken to many residents. How are they coping with the water crisis? Perhaps the water crisis right now for them is a much bigger crisis, or a bigger crisis than this bill. And how are they getting along? You mentioned the finances, the funding that EPA announced. How are they getting along? What are you seeing? Give us a sense, because Michael Regan really gave us some things that really made us angry.
Yeah.
Give us a sense of what the average Jackson resident is experiencing as we speak.
As with most things, I would say that the sentiments around that are complex. On one hand, there's a sense of unfortunate normalcy that was set in the city of Jackson, with having the instability of our water system, the fragility of our water system. We have residents that remember as far back as the 70s. My earliest memory goes back to the late 80s. When we moved here in 88 and 89, we experienced a freeze that debilitated our water system at that time. And so, Jackson residents have become and demonstrated incredible resilience. And so that is one portion of it. The other portion is the immediate effect that it has on the daily interactions and life and quality of life of people, more than just the sanitary and consumption concerns of water, the issues of childcare when schools are closed because there's an interruption in water service. Where do I take my children? If I work in a service industry, how do I make do when my hours are cut because my job may be shut down for a period of time? And, at the end of the day, most people don't care how a watch works. They just want to be able to tell time.
Yeah.
And so we've been giving highly technical responses as to what is happening. And we believe we owe them that information and owe them that honesty. I do believe that there is a growing sense of optimism because throughout this fight, what we have been devoid of is actual resources to contend with the system. Now, $800 million certainly is a lot of money, and certainly to people who have not had that available to them, it seems like a heck of a lot of money. It is not enough to buy us shiny, brand new everything,
Right.
but it is a sea change from where we've been, and we can start moving forward on creating resilience. And so where we have responsibility now is making sure that the community is at the center of the discussions of what an equitable, reliable, and dependable system looks like.
Well, I tell you what, Mayor, whenever you decide to leave the mayor's office and perhaps even leave politics, you certainly have been well versed in a career in crisis management. That's for sure. You got a lot of experience there.
Yeah, baptism by fire.
Yes, indeed. Listen, Mayor, we will continue to stay on this story. We will continue to interact with your office. And perhaps sometime in the not too distant future, we can have you back to give us an update, and hopefully, a good update.
Yeah. Well, I
Yes.
look forward to it. And once again, I appreciate your effort in lifting this up. I just don't want to understate that, one of the things that we have to make certain that we control in our liberation efforts and our efforts towards building self-determined spaces is to have control over our communication and our media. So I appreciate what y'all do every day.
Well, the smartest thing anyone can do is come to the Black press. And
Yeah.
so, Mayor Chokwe Lumumba, we really appreciate you, and all the best down there in Jackson, the blackest city in the nation, as they say. We appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
There again, folks, the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, Austin Barrington, Attorney Tarver. I'm going to go to the lawyer first. What's your takeaway, Attorney Tarver, from this discussion with the mayor?
The takeaway is that they are in serious, serious problems down there. And, we have spoken so many times on this program about interconnectivity. You cannot talk about what is happening here without recognizing that the relief that would and could be provided by the Voting Rights Act of 1965 no longer available because Justice Roberts and others of his ilk systematically dismantled the Voting Rights Act, and Congress refuses to put it back together. And so we're sitting here because Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act would say in this case that since everyone else in the state is able to vote for their judicial appointees, their judges, etc., depriving these citizens of the right to vote for them, that should be put on hold. That's why you had Section 5, because when these things were suspect due to race, you could actually put them on hold until there was a favorable determination. But that's gone now. It
is gone.
And so we're basically trying to fight this thing, or find ourselves in a position of fighting this thing without the help of the federal government.
Jackie Hampton, the publisher of the Mississippi Link, so good to see Jackie watching on YouTube today. She says, thanks to you, us here at Let It Be Known, and our publishers for focusing on our issues here in Mississippi. These issues are in Jackson today, but are certain to travel in other cities in the future. Austin, I think Jackie is absolutely right.
Absolutely agreed. And it was good to see the mayor. I was, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but was somewhat surprised and pleasantly surprised to see, despite all of this turmoil going on legislative, politically, and to me, a state that is so far behind in race relations and is comfortably going backwards instead of going forward, to see his optimism. not despair, but his optimism and his calm. I certainly think that he is a young brother and a man for these challenging political times in Jackson.
Yeah, Barrington, your takeaway from the conversation with Mayor Chokwe Lumumba.
I think the thing that strikes me the most is what he said, that they're showing us who exactly they are.
Mm-hmm.
I lament sometimes because too many times we wait until they do things before we strike. I think we need to be more proactive.
Yep.
I am wondering, as I've been listening to this, how effective an economic boycott of Mississippi would be, because as Robert said, we don't have the Supreme Court. Many of the federal courts are stacked with them nitwits that Trump put in place, and the federal government's hands seem to be tied. So to me, it's up to us to find the tools that we need to kick these folks in their butt.
There you go. And Attorney Tarver, can you do us a favor? Can you break down this law? If it passes, what it really boils down to, what really is going to be the outcome?
Yeah, here's what it does. Within this district that they've created, this capital improvement district, they have determined that this law would allow for the state's chief justice, who is white, the attorney general, who is white, the public safety director, who is white, to participate in appointing judges, prosecutors, public defenders, and more importantly, police officers to basically run that district of the city. Now, the problem with that is that overall, Mississippi law dictates that judges are elected, as they are in many other places. This Mississippi was the first place to have elected judges. And so what they've done is they've taken the mechanism for having judges away from the people, and they've vested the appointment mechanism in the hands of just a few individuals who are going to deal with this one area. Now, the interesting thing is that one area is a majority white area. And so you are likely to get justice that reflects the composition of that area. You're likely to get white justice. And so what it does from a legal perspective, it deprives those people who are in that area. Everyone in the area is not white, but it changes the composition and does not allow them to be able to elect judges, and doesn't put the burden on judges to have to run and state their policy and their position like everywhere else. And that's different, because what it does is it actually treats one set of voters differently than another set of voters. And this is why I've been so critical, because Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which has also been removed, would have said that where you have people who are seeking to exercise their right to vote differently than another area, and that could go either way. It could be the people who are in that white section, but it could also be the people who are in the black section who may want to have appointed judges as well. Right. By the people who look like them and reflect their beliefs. They can't have it. And you cannot have two separate systems of justice who treat the mechanisms of justice differently. The biggest problem is that you are giving these appointed judges the same power that you are giving the elected judges, which is the power over life and liberty. And that violates, I believe, constitutional provisions.
Well,
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I have a question too.
What
fire away?
What legal recourse does the mayor have once this bill passes? Is there anything that Department of Justice can do to offer any type of a relief? What legal recourse, if any, does he have?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't pretend to know Mississippi law, and I don't pretend to know the Mississippi Constitution. However, on the federal level, the fact that there is what I would consider to be a separate system of justice, one group treated differently than another group, is violative of the United States Constitution. It is violative of the 14th Amendment. You cannot discriminate. You cannot treat one group differently than another. And that's what this particularly does for the reasons that I set forth. So the Justice Department can move forward on that basis. They don't need the Voting Rights Act to be able to move forward on that basis.
Yeah, Kimberly Cooper, before you ask your question, Barrington says, writes in on Facebook, it essentially eliminates fair representation. And Ricardo Johnson, I guess, is a fan of yours, Barrington, because he says boycott everything in a 50-mile radius. Change will happen overnight. But go ahead, Barrington, your question for Attorney Tarver.
So, Attorney Tarver, I'm wondering, I don't know if you said it earlier, but does this portend that it's going to spread to other states and other Republican-controlled legislatures?
Look, I mean, if recent history has showed us anything, it is that these individuals who are regressive will seek any means that they can to put us in an unfavorable position as Black Americans. And this is basically just the roadmap for that type of thing, even right now. And I'm not saying that the creation of these improvement zones, capital zones, tourist zones all across America are done so with a racist intent. But having created them, because most of the time they're created in areas where there is an economic interest, which tends to be a white area. Having created them, there could be a recognition on the part of the people who control those to say, hey, here's a roadmap for us to make sure that our interests are protected by separating what we do here from the larger Black communities.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow. Well, again, we are certainly going to continue to follow this situation. We're really grateful that the mayor spend a half hour with us this afternoon to discuss this vital issue, because I think Barrington's question, to Jackie Hampton's concerns, and I think we've expressed this before. I think that you let this go, and next thing you know, it's in Texas, it's in Florida, it's in Alabama, it's in North Carolina, it's everywhere else. And again, Power 96 continues to say New Orleans will be next. The state government already wants the National Guard to control the city. And this is such a vital thing. And it's a surprise in a lot of ways that people have ignored this story until the guys sitting on this panel today, Austin and Barrington and myself and Greer behind stage, and of course we have Attorney Tarver, has started to bring this issue to the fore. And thanks to people like Dawn Montgomery and Totally Randy, they are really pushing this thing out to let people know that this is happening. So Barrington, Austin, we really appreciate all the hard work you keep doing. And Attorney Tarver, you are invaluable. We appreciate you so much. And again, thanks to Mayor Lumumba of Jackson. We'll be following this. And thanks to you all for tuning in and watching Let It Be Known. We'll see you again on Monday.